Yes, good girl. Let's keep going. Tight. Checking in, scanning. Because this is a place. Yes, good girl. This is a place where lots of people pop out from that trail down there or on the walking path. So she's learned to expect that. So she's on high alert right now, checking it out. And I'm waiting for her to kind of swallow all of those emotions and come back to me. And her coming back to me and swallowing all those emotions is hallmarked by her turning around and looking at me. Or doing something like that. Shaking off would be nice too. Yes, good girl. Her reward, instead of getting food, because she's so far progressed with this behavior, is to continue to walk forward in her environment. So normally dogs that feel a lot love to explore their environment and push buttons in their environment. So I'm using that as a reinforcement instead of treats or toys or anything else rewards-based. Trainers get criticized for using too much. I don't have to use a prong collar. I'm not correcting her. I'm not using a choke chain or an e-collar to dampen her drive to interact with her environment. I'm using access to the environment as a reward and removal of access to environment as a consequence for her being amped up. Removing her further access into her environment should also help prevent her from continuing to climb in her arousal. Like right now, the leash has been tight for 10 seconds or so. If I allow her to continue to move forward in her environment while she's pulling on that leash, yes, good girl, you saw a stress yawn there and it turned back into me. In my opinion, that was her way of releasing some of that stress and coming off of it. She sees a pedestrian ahead. She decided to turn around and avoid. Yes, good girl. And in this situation, she's afraid of pedestrians and people she doesn't know. So I'm going to let her decide if she wants to continue to move forward or if she wants to turn around. Because ideally we're going to create a dog that, if not on a leash, would decide to not charge at the pedestrian, but instead turn around and avoid it. Yes, and she's made the decision on her own to turn around and avoid and go in another direction, which is great. And again, I don't have treats. I'm not using any kind of corrective collars. This is all stuff that I've conditioned her to through training. Any kind of tension on the lead is a sign that she's kind of snowballing into her impulsivity, and so that's when I stop and say, hey girl, you need to take some breaths and come off before you continue to move on in this environment that's feeding you. So she saw something else ahead, probably the same pedestrian. She gave me a look back, but she went right to it. Now she's huffing. Yes, good girl. And she chose to turn around and smell whatever's over here. So dogs that feel a lot, very emotional dogs, very fragile dogs, very anxious dogs, tend to be the reactive dogs. And so I've found that they just need help putting brakes on, stopping that avalanche of emotions that comes when they're navigating their environment. They need to just stop, and I'm the one that's having her stop by just not moving forward with her. They need to stop and just being given the opportunity to come down from that arousal, to make more logical decisions, like avoiding something she's afraid of, instead of being emotional in her decision making and creating a confrontation with something that she's uncomfortable about. I've used operant and classical conditioning here. The operant behaviors I have trained have been those auto check-ins and those they become offered recalls. I have captured avoidance behaviors, like her turning away, turning the gaze onto me. And then through training those operant behaviors, I'm able to have the environment give her more classical conditioning, where when she chooses to avoid that man, the environment gives her that feedback of that man not coming closer to her. So it's conditioning her that choosing avoidance works. Choosing avoidance still created that man to walk away. She didn't have to choose to be aggressive to get the desired result that she wanted, which was for that guy to go away. And now she's continuing to progress towards where that guy was in a very relaxed, good state of mind. So I'm reinforcing her with that. Now, as we get closer, we're going to struggle a little bit more. She's alerted to something. She can hear, I think, a light post. You saw she let out a breath with a huff. And she's turning away. And I'm reinforcing her decision to turn away. She could have turned away just to smell this poop bag dispenser, but I'm going to reinforce it. I see some kids up ahead, really young kids, so I'm not going to push her with this. Now she's pulling me to smell this post. Yes. She turns around because she said there's tension in the lead, and I let her smell this as her reward. So that man that she saw just before is about to loop back around. He's on the other side of the gazebo. We are so much more close to him than we were before. She's taking note of those kids over there. Yes, good girl. So let's see what she does as this man gets closer. She might have a reactive outburst. We'll see. She's looking at him. And the kids right now. Now the kids and this man, yes, good girl, may be trigger stacking her. And she just made the decision to walk away. She's checked back. Yes, good girl. She's continuing to make the decision to walk away. Now I have her on a long line here. And so this is simulating an off-leash experience. She just saw that guy again. So if Lennox was off-leash right now, yes, she still would have made the decision to stay where she is. Yes, and look back at me. And that's what we want. You see how slack the lead is? I'm not the reason why she's staying here. Yes, good girl. Now what I'm starting to get a little nervous about is as this man approaches, yes, Lennox, will she move away from him or continue to stay close? Ideally, she'd move away. She's getting more and more agitated. It's harder for her. Yes, you hear a sigh and come off. That tail went up. Yes, good girl. She might go into a body shake. Yes, good job, Lennox. That sneeze is another way for her to let go. Yes, good girl. Yay, good job, Lennox. And she chose to move away. That's great. So again, Lennox, dog, reactive to dogs and people. Pretty much everything. She likes to bark at. She's a dog that definitely feels a lot. And so I've gone through so many months of working with her on how to better come off of those kind of more stressful behaviors by capturing avoidance behaviors, like her turning her gaze, walking away from those triggers. I've used operant conditioning there to reinforce those behaviors with treats. And now that those behaviors are being offered, she's able to be conditioned by the consequences in her own environment to continue to have those avoidance behaviors reinforced. Like that guy still didn't come over to her even though she chose to avoid. She didn't have to be aggressive. All right, Lenny, you ready to go? Come on, let's go.